Good evening.
Good evening, folks. Don't know whereabouts in the world you are, but for those of you within the UK, you will probably, like me, be thinking to yourself, we have autumn evenings approaching in rapidly at the moment. It wasn't that long ago at this time I could still see the sunset, but unfortunately that is no longer the case at the moment.
Definitely. Oh, don't make us sad straight first thing in the meeting.
I'm sure this evening will be a great replacement for any sunset that might have been occurring. Okay. It will be stimulating and invigorating.
I hope so. I hope so. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to SDS Thursday. We are Paul Grantham and myself are directors of SDS Seminars. We are a UK-based company, and we've been running training events for mental health practitioners for the last 33 years. 33 years, yes. Well, that's okay. It just shows how experienced we are.
How am I going to pretend I'm 40 if you're saying that?
And and we've been running this SDS Thursdays for the last 3 years, 3.5 now. So my first question to you, as always, to start typing in the chat box and letting us know a little bit. Love the book in the background. Thank you, Xenia. And that's the book I've written, and I've decided why not put it there. Thank you. And yes, so please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are in the world, and as always, what setting you're working in. And I know you may be saying, oh, Julia, you know it by heart. I'm writing it every time I come to SDS Thursday. But believe it or not, we've got plenty of people who are here for the first time, and plenty of people who are very happy to read the chat box and to find out about their colleagues who are here. So please, just a few lines would be really, really nice. So as always, what area you're working in, and because today's topic is working with self-esteem, I always ask you to let us know a little bit about your experience of working with clients with issues of self-esteem. I deliberately don't say low or whatever, but with issues around self-esteem. Also, I'm always interested whether you've been to SDS Thursdays before or whether it's your first time. And if it is your first time, how did you find out about us? Did you see an advert in one of the professional magazines, or you saw an advert on Google, or maybe a colleague told you about SDS Thursday? Just let us know very briefly, how did you discover us? What else I'm interested in? I'm always interested in something else, and I can't remember what. I always ask something else, and it'll come to me. Maybe you can remember what I normally ask.
Infectious enthusiasm.
Yes, maybe you can just remind me what I'm normally asking about.
Gosh, I need to remember.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean you, Paul. I mean.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. I know.
They probably
you know what my memory is like. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So anything you find relevant, just to introduce yourself. And while we're still gathering, because it's usually a few minutes, people are still coming. And I just wanted to remind you how to find our website and how to find out what else we are doing in terms of this free CPD events. The first thing I wanted to show you, especially to those who haven't attended SDS Thursdays before, is our YouTube channel. To find our YouTube channel, you go on YouTube and you search for SDS Psychotherapy Training, or you look for Paul's name, just search for Paul Grantham and you will see our videos. You can see that the list of Thursdays we've done is enormous, and you can find practically any topic that we're offering. We did do a brief event on SDS Thursday and we had lots of very, very interesting presenters. Also, I will be very grateful if you subscribed and if you put a like and a short comment after the video which you watched, because apparently that's how YouTube works. YouTube algorithms pick up your likes and your comments and then recommend these videos to other people. So hopefully that will help us to get new subscribers. So that's one thing. The other thing is obviously how to find SDS website. You go on skillsdevelopment.co.uk. Again, you can just put in Google SDS seminars and you will find us very, very easily. On SDS Seminars Online, you can find events with Paul on working with low self-esteem. So that's all I wanted to mention in terms of screen sharing. And I think we are more or less all here now. And I'm very happy to introduce the founder of SDS Seminars, Paul Grantham, who will take you through today's topic. And I believe there will be a quiz, so you will be able actually to answer some questions, but Paul will introduce this to you. Paul, please.
Thanks very much, Julia, and welcome this evening, folks. We did sort of have this evening planned a while in advance anyway on self-esteem, but maybe totally coincidentally, the issue of self-esteem seems to have cropped up in popular consciousness a little bit more, I think. Probably only over the last 12 months I've noticed that difference in comparison to the situation before. It's a very big topic indeed, I think, and seen as being quite central. I think probably something up until about 10 years ago, and then I think it sort of fell off as a topic of interest. I think in some ways it was probably overtaken by some of the ideas in positive psychology, which were addressing similar sorts of things to some extent. But I've noticed that it's been slowly climbing back up again. And I was amazed just a few days ago to actually see this particular survey, which was in the site News Daily. I don't know how many of you look at this, but this is a large scale survey, as you can see, 33,000 children in 21 countries. And it was raising an issue which I remember being an issue of controversy. Gosh, this gives my age away again. An issue of controversy, I think, probably about 20 years ago, and then sort of didn't become an issue of controversy. But not surprisingly, I think with children in particular, it's often seen as a particular concern, and that is the whole issue of the relationship between physical appearance and self-esteem. And as you can actually see here, the big headline issue that's actually being raised on this particular website is the fact that self-rated physical appearance appears to be the most important determining factor in self-esteem in children, beating academic competence, athletics, and peer relationships. So I actually think it's sort of quite timely, really, to come back and just flag up some of the issues that are around, because I suspect that all of us here who are working with clients will at least periodically be working with clients where it's, first of all, strikes us that our client has poor or low self-esteem, and also that what it is that we're doing with our client is obviously a direct or indirect attempt at actually addressing that. So it seemed to me to be quite pertinent to raise it again, because I will be honest with you, I think that this is an incredibly misunderstood concept, and I think one of the big implications of that, incidentally, is that I think that a number of the interventions that are often used to build self-esteem either totally miss the mark, they don't actually address the problem at all, or in some particular instances, I actually think they make the problem worse. But I think the most common issue is a misunderstanding, which means that then interventions miss the mark. So I thought that basically the best way of getting into this was to just take you through a small quiz to see what your thoughts are on some of these particular topics. So that's where we're going to go now. So we've got a quiz with a total, if I remember correctly, of 5 questions, which are going to come up. If you can look at all 5, folks, as they come up on the screen, and if you can basically vote on what you think the answer is in each instance. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up for discussion, and I'll also combine it with a little bit of presentation as well. So if I can pass that over to you, please, Julia.
Self-Esteem Thursday launch.
There we go.
Okay, worked? Okay.
Yeah.
So go through it, scroll down. Do I have to scroll, or you can individually scroll?
I think we can individually scroll. I can
Okay, fantastic.
down
So
on mine.
you scroll yourself and submit. That's it.
Yes. Don't be shy, folks. Jump into each question one at a time. Don't think you've got to read through all the questions before you answer.
Yeah. That's where we should put some nice music in.
We should really. I'll try and conjure some up later on. Yeah.
Okay. 81%, 57 people. I'll be ending poll and sharing the results.
Yeah. Okay. So let's have a look at what you've got down here. So on the first question, which of these best describes low self-esteem? So obviously the most popular answer here is a combination of low self-confidence and low self-worth. And some of you have added on to that either at 12%, 4% say none of the above, and 2% alone would identify it as being synonymous with low self-confidence, and we will come back to that point in a minute. Murak, I'm going to come back to Murak in a minute, folks, but just to say, if you are interested in this topic, in my opinion, any of the books by Murak or any of the papers by Murak are probably the most informed and thoughtful and also practical, I think, writings that are around on self-esteem. And he actually identifies 3 types of low self-esteem, which are called classic low self-esteem, defensive self-esteem 1, and defensive self-esteem 2. Are you familiar with these types? 95% of you say no. And in many ways, this sort of gets to the nub of the whole issue of what it is that we're choosing to work with and whether we're working with the right thing. Different types of low self-esteem have different therapeutic implications. Which of the following is the most accurate statement? Classic low self-esteem requires a focus on facilitating the client's self-worth. Defensive self-esteem 1 requires a focus on increasing self-efficacy. Defensive self-esteem 2 requires a focus on increasing self-efficacy and self-worth, and none of the above as well. And obviously, the most popular answer here as being most accurate is that classic low self-esteem requires a focus on facilitating client self-worth. Can I just say that probably doesn't surprise me as an answer, and it's probably, in my opinion, one of the most common partial truths, but not full truth about self-esteem, which we're going to come back to in a minute. Number 4, always interested to see how people respond to this. Body maintenance and enhancement, including hairdressing, cosmetics, and clothing, typically produces only short-term positive changes in self-esteem at best. 82% of you are saying true to that, and less than 20% are saying false. We'll come back to that issue later on. What two skills training-based interventions make the biggest difference to poor self-efficacy? And basically the most common answer that's given here, as you can see, is distress tolerance and positive self-talk. Over half of you have identified that. Just over a quarter have identified problem-solving assertiveness training. None of you have identified EMDR and diffusion, and none of the above comes in again around about 1 in 5 of you. So an interesting selection of responses there. I'm going to stop the sharing at this particular point. But I think that it sets the scene well, really, for what I wanted to sort of open up about the whole issue of self-esteem, which incidentally, if you do find of interest and you want to do a deeper dive into it, we obviously have a number of trainings that are available on this if you want to follow it up more later on. But let me just first of all, I think, start doing a little mini presentation on what I would argue that self-esteem is actually about, and to make this initial first distinction, really, which I think in many ways is the most important distinction to be thinking about when you've got someone in front of you who you feel or identify may have self-esteem problems, really. So hopefully you can see that without any difficulties. Does that look okay? Yep, it does. Great. Okay, so this is the distinction that Mruck makes and has made throughout all of his work. And I think in many ways, as I just said, I think it's the most important concept to grasp, really. Self-esteem is not a unitary state. It's not a unitary concept. It's actually about two separate but potentially interacting factors that are around for people. One of them might be generally described as a sense of self-worth, a sense of value. And the other one can be broadly described as a sense of competence and self-efficacy, which is obviously the belief in oneself about being able to do things. So just so you've got some broad idea about what these two ideas mean, just to flesh them out a bit, worthiness here is about attitude towards self as a person, the valuing of self, self-acceptance, feeling comfortable in your own skin and with who you are, and valuing what you have, and with a general absence of social comparisons, and particularly downward, or if you do make social comparisons, they're only downward social comparisons. I don't know if you're familiar with this concept. I just think it is so crucial to understand. But broadly speaking, people who make downward social comparisons, generally speaking, overall tend to have better mental health than people who make upward social comparisons. So downward social comparisons, we all make social comparisons, by the way, folks. We can't escape from it. It's a fact of life, because we interact with other people and we are part of communities. But people tend to vary quite a lot about the tendency to which they compare themselves to others who have something that they don't have, or alternatively, they compare where they're actually at and are always looking at the things that they don't have, which encourage them to aspire to have those things. And then we've got downward social comparisons, where people have a greater tendency to compare themselves to people that they perceive as less well off than they are, and that, or they will tend to value what they already have rather than what they lack in some way. And I hope you can see in the latter example, for instance, that that's actually quite not necessarily synonymous with, but it's a fast track route to gratitude. And we know in all sorts of other areas that gratitude plays such a key role in good mental health. So that's where this is where we're talking about worthiness, and in this last instance, obviously, we're talking about a positive sense of self-worth. And competence and self-efficacy is, sorry about the misspelling at the top here, just so you can understand how this is different. This is nothing about how I see myself as a person, as an individual. It's nothing at all to do with my pure evaluative sense of myself. It's all to do with doing things. And it's to do with how skilled I actually am in doing things. It's also about my confidence in doing things. It's about the value I place on my ability to do things. It also tends to shift into things like beliefs in success when carrying out a particular task. So we will typically find that people who have good or high sense of self-competency and self-efficacy tend on the whole to be bigger predictors of their own success when they're actually doing something than people who don't have that. And there's a general issue here about my belief in my own behavior, my belief in my ability to control my behavior, or for my behavior to produce the things that I actually want. So the key idea to bear in mind here is that when we're looking at self-esteem, we are potentially looking at combinations of these two separate things. They have some implications with regards to the different interventions that we might use. And I'm going to come back to these later on, but this is in some ways, I think, this distinction here gives us some pointers to the things that we might be doing according to what the needs of the client are that's before us. I'm not going to go into any greater detail with these, but I hope you can see, for instance, on the sorry, my spelling went to pot here, didn't it? That on the self-efficacy based interventions sense, these are interventions which are all doing type interventions. So they're either skills training interventions or they are action interventions in some particular way. They are also quite outcome driven. That's why the goal setting is in there. And if there are cognitive elements in it, then they are cognitive elements relating to beliefs about basically my ability to do things or my likely success in doing things. Whereas if you tend to look on the other side of the coin on worthiness-based interventions, these would, for example, lay a very different emphasis on what it is that is important and valuable for, certainly in therapeutic work, for the person who has a poor sense of self-worth. The therapeutic relationship and feeling valued within the therapeutic relationship becomes even more central. I'm not saying it's absent in the other instance, but becomes even more central. Because if I have a low sense of self-worth, having an ongoing relationship with someone who behaves as if I have value and who values and validates who I am as a person obviously provides an extremely important experience. Some cognitive interventions again, but these tend to not be in relation to what I might do. They're more related to how I view and see myself. So that they specifically address things like negative beliefs like I'm unlovable, that sort of idea, or I'm not worthy, those sorts of ideas. And then I think almost invariably the degree to which individuals provide their own positive self-feedback as well. Broadly speaking, we know that people who tell themselves that they're okay, on the whole, tend to be more likely to feel okay. I'm not sure that's surprising, but it's just worth, I think, pointing it out. And also self-care and self-enhancement, which is the controversial area, which I'm going to come back to in a minute. Okay, but those are sort of broadly where the issues lie. Actually, we're not going to get into this particular slide yet. Let me come back to this. So if we look at self-esteem as being a combination of these two things, there are, can I say, a number of self-esteem validated assessment tools that are around. And I would encourage you to use them as part of your assessment, because I think that identifying where your client lies potentially in these 4 segments has big implications for the work that you're going to do with them, if that makes sense. I don't think, to be honest with you, that the psychometric tools that are around at the moment are good enough to be used by themselves, but I do think that they are an excellent component or addition to the assessment. I think there's also a need for a structured interview, and we got some references on that if you want to come along to the more detailed training. So let's have a look at what would be called classic high self-esteem. Someone who has got good self-esteem, and these are people who would be scoring high on self-worthiness and high on competence and self-efficacy. Now, there's been a very big debate in the literature about whether or not people can have too much self-esteem. And again, I'm not going to go into the detail of that at the moment. You can unpackage that and think about that at a later stage. I'm generally speaking someone who sits in the camp of saying that high self-esteem is always desirable, so in that respect, I have no worries whether I am working with a client about how far I should go in terms of building their self-esteem. And these are typically individuals, people who do have classic high self-esteem, are people who are usually pretty influential. They're often quite iconic figures. They have a great belief in their own value and their own worth, but they are also typically that they are competent doers. They're very often in the political field, major leaders in certain things as well. So in that respect, that's where classic good self-esteem lies, in that particular quadrant. But I'm guessing that we're not likely to come across many clients who are there. So what tends to happen, I think, when we come across clients with those that we perceive as having low self-esteem, is that typically we perceive them as lying in one of the bottom quadrants, the quadrant with low competence and self-efficacy and low sense of worthiness. So, and there's lots of clients that I've certainly worked with, and you've probably worked with, who would fall into that category. These are people who do not think that they have any value. And in addition to that, they basically don't function very well, and their confidence is very low. In other words, they are not competent doers. When I'm using this terminology, one of the interventions that we have sometimes used for dealing with low self-efficacy and competence, this is not across the board, but just to give you an example where we have used it, is we've used this with some individuals basically who have very chaotic lifestyles, and where what we call dealing with the challenges of daily living is actually one of their biggest difficulties. You know, so we're not talking about massive successes here. We're just talking about doing the things that we need to do in order to get through a day, basically. And you know, there are some people with very low classic self-esteem, low self-esteem, who have those sorts of problems, as well as seeing themselves as not having any self-worth. Okay, so so there are some folks who fall into that category. It's the other two categories where things get really interesting, and they have implications for what we do. So let's have a look at the other quadrant at the bottom here, with people who have a high sense of self-efficacy and competence, but a low sense of self-worth. Now, let me just give you an example of someone that I worked with who fell into this particular category very well. This was a senior civil servant, highly competent, very competent indeed in her personal life, in the sense that she would be a big organizer. She had a big network of friends. She could, she would organize things at the drop of the hat. She was always very good at it. She was very competent in work, and she recognized all of this. But for her, it had no value at all, because actually she thought that she was a pretty unimportant person. That actually her problems related to the very low sense of self-worth that she had. And indeed, if you were to say to her, what's your confidence like? She would have happily have said, my confidence is very good, but I still think I'm rubbish. So what I want to highlight here is confidence is a component part of self-esteem, but it's quite possible to have good confidence, because confidence is all about doing things. It's quite possible to have good confidence, but to actually have low self-worth. And, there are loads of people, I think, but it's probably most noticeable in the entertainment industry, for people who are highly competent in their field, but have a lousy sense of self-worth. We've got lots of examples, for instance, of people who have not looked after themselves or declined or even committed suicide, despite the fact that they are highly competent individuals, and they have no problems demonstrating that competence very often to an audience. But it doesn't deal with the issue of worthiness for them. I'll come back to this point in a minute, because it's an interesting one. And then what I think is actually one of the most challenging areas that's around is people who exist in this top quadrant with a high sense of worthiness, but with a low sense of competence and self-efficacy. Now, these are typically people, and I think this is a very important point to emphasize, these are typically people who genuinely think that they are God's gift. This is not a facade. They genuinely think they're God's gift, although that belief that they are God's gift may be supported by a particular environment that they're in, which might leave it fragile, but not always, not always. But they think that they are fabulous individuals, but they are highly incompetent. They just can't do things. And I was trying to think of examples to give you to sort of illustrate this. And I still, unfortunately, think that the best example of someone who sort of falls into this category, I don't know how many of you are familiar with, because it's a bit old now, we're familiar with the original series of The Office and David Brent. David Brent, certainly, can I say, in series 1, is a classic example of someone who is in this category. He genuinely thinks he's fabulous. He genuinely thinks he's fabulous, but is highly incompetent. Okay. Now,
I think we have quite a few on the political scene at the moment.
Well, I'm trying to avoid being political here, but who can I be to disagree on that? The interesting thing about these folks is, I think very often, if you do come across individuals that are like this as clients, and generally speaking, can I say, if you are going to come across them as clients, the chances are relatively high that they would not have chosen to come and see you. I mean, why would they? So why are they seeing you? They've usually been sent, pressurized, mandated, something of that nature. But I think it's very common indeed, if we are sitting in front of someone like this, that we tend to assume that the fact that they think they're wonderful is somehow or other a defensive facade. All I want to make clear here is that there are a number of people where that is not the case. It is not the case. Now, bearing these factors in mind, there is one other sort of ingredient to throw into the mix here, which I think is very important to bear in mind, which is that it is still the case, and interestingly enough, has not really changed. The data on this has not really changed in the last 30 years, which I think people were anticipating that it would, which is that there are quite big gender differences with regards to where individuals draw their self-esteem from. And broadly speaking, this is very broad brush, but broadly speaking, there is a greater tendency for males to derive their self-esteem from self-efficacy, and a slightly greater tendency for females to derive their self-esteem from worthiness elements. Okay, so how good I feel overall about myself is more likely for males to be more determined by their ability to do things, whereas for females there is still much more of an emphasis on how I see myself as a person. Okay, so let's just stop at this particular point, because I hope by this stage this sort of largely sets the main scene for what we should be doing with our clients. So let me just outline what it is. If your primary, or probably more importantly, your sole therapeutic approach is to help your client feel better about themselves and who they are as an individual, in some instances this is enormously valuable, and in other instances it really misses the mark. If you are working with the David Brents of this world, you do not need to be helping them to think more positively about themselves. What you might need to be doing instead is to help them to become more competent. Equally, can I say that if you are working with somebody who is actually broadly very competent, but who actually is lacking on the worthiness side of things, then to be honest with you, you are largely going to find that goal setting work, skills training, all of those sorts of things which are about doing, you may actually find, incidentally, the individual is very good at learning them, but it actually doesn't make any difference to how they actually feel about themselves. Does that make sense? I've also increasingly come across a problem where that emphasis on solely focusing on worthiness has become something of an issue with regards to engaging a certain proportion of males in therapy. Because basically, if males do have a greater tendency to derive their self-esteem from doing type things, then if all of your effort is going to be placed on helping the person to see themselves as a human being in a different way, to value themselves more, to get more into self-care, all of those sorts of things, there is a greater danger that you'll miss the mark on it. So what I guess I really wanted to leave you with is just a broad overall view of how self-esteem is not one thing. And that in addition to that, a good assessment, I think, is really important, and that you need to have a range of different approaches and interventions that you might potentially use with your clients, based firstly and foremostly on the assessment and what areas they're lacking in, and also what areas they value more, and to basically adjust your interventions accordingly. But I just wanted,
Paul, while you are at that point and you mentioned assessment, Catherine is asking how to access these assessment tools and where to find them. And I don't expect you necessarily to answer straight away, but probably we will be sending a follow-up email after this. Maybe you could at least give us a list.
I'll put a couple in, but can I just say this issue is quite complicated, so I'm feeling a bit wary of that, and why I'll probably say do the course, because we do go into it in more detail. But I'll pop one or two there, but for goodness sake, I wouldn't just be taking those as the only things to use, because it is a more complicated issue than that. But yeah, fair enough.
And obviously, you've already answered the question. We had another question from another Catherine. How does gender affect this? But I think
Yes,
we've
yeah,
covered it. And
yeah.
Vicky is asking about disability and somebody with disability who has low self-worth but is amazing at their job. So
Right.
how does that affect self-esteem?
Couple of things to say here, I think. The first one is that in a peculiar way, competence and self-efficacy are not exactly identical. So you can have someone who is competent, but actually doesn't value the competency that's actually there. My first question to the person who's very good at their job is, are you proud of the fact that you're very good at your job? And if they say yes, then clearly self-efficacy plays an important role for them. If they say no, I just happen to do it, I'm just lucky that way, then, you know, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be following that area through. It also tends to mean, of course, with the example that you've just given, that the primary focus ought to be on self-worth things, and that you don't end up almost inadvertently doing things with the client because that's what you do with your client, which actually end up, when you look at what it is you're doing with your client, is actually trying to make them more skillful, more competent, a better doer, which they may well become, but actually doesn't end up affecting their self-esteem, because the issue is how they view themselves as a human being, how they view themselves as a person. Now, the issue about disability is an interesting one, because I've already made that distinction between competency and self-efficacy. So in a strange way, if we're talking about someone with a disability here, it is, if we look at the competency side of things, the key question is not whether someone can do something or can't do something. The issue is basically whether they are able to do the best that they can do given their circumstances, and given the situation that they're actually working with. Because everybody, can I just say, potentially, all of us could always be doing better. Whatever it is that we like to do, we could always be doing better. So there's never an argument that, you know, we're always at the top of the tree, and we all have our own limitations. So what I'm more interested in, really, with someone who's disabled, over the competency things, is really what their attitude is to the challenges that they produce for them, and how they attempt to actually manage those or attempt to interact with those challenges. So for me, that's a much more important issue. The other thing, of course, to say with the disability example is that we mustn't forget the worthiness element of it. So again, it's quite possible to have someone who's disabled, very competent, proud of what they can actually do, but actually their self-worth is very low.
Yeah.
Equally, we could have someone who is very disabled in terms of their functioning, but gets to grips with it well, but actually they have a very strong sense of why they are a valuable human being, and that they value that. So in a way, I don't see it as fundamentally different if we're dealing with somebody who is disabled. It does also shade into the area that I want to finish on today, because it's the bit that I don't want to lose before we actually finish, which has to do, if I just move these slides forward again, has to do with the issue of what's called body enhancement and body maintenance. Now, this covers a whole range of things here, folks, as you can actually see with this particular list, but the evidence on this is pretty consistent, which is that although the long-term effects are not in perpetuity, there is no evidence to suggest that the vast majority of self-care and body enhancement and maintenance strategies that someone might use only produce short-term effects. And can I just say, as you look through that list that you've got here, I would be extraordinarily surprised if practically everybody here would not see the value for themselves in at least some of these things. You know, and we often, with clients, we often talk about making the best of what you've got as far as your body is concerned. We use that phrase quite a lot, making the best of what you've got. We all have variable bodies, clearly, but we make choices about how we treat those bodies, and we make choices about how we present those bodies to the world. And that ultimately is a statement about self-care, and ultimately a statement about how we perceive our value. I hate to say it, but we still, even in 2023, so often have a massive mind-body split in our thinking. And we fail to recognize that our attitude towards our bodies and the way we treat those is as integral to our self-esteem as the way we think, for example, or the way we feel, or our attitudes. So yeah, there's a number of examples of studies which found that these make a real difference. I just thought I would end this with what I still find a quite inspirational photograph, really, of someone who basically had a shave and a haircut, and the difference that actually made. For me, this is just it's the same person, by the way, folks, in case you were wondering there, in terms of what's happened to his beard, his hair, including dyeing it. Heavens forbid. Who the heck would ever think that tinting your hair should be a route into good self-esteem? But there we go. For some people, it plays an important part. So I haven't got time now to go into this, but in the longer training that we do, I will at least mention some of the projects I've been involved with, where some of the self-esteem work that's been done, particularly for addressing issues of worthiness, have specifically focused on helping people to make the best of their bodies in terms of the way they present them in the world, according to criteria which they themselves choose. Yeah, so I guess where I wanted to finish with you today is that I hope you can see that self-esteem is a bit more complicated than most people first think, and that actually there's a whole range of different things that you may not necessarily have considered, which actually may play a role with the individual clients that you're actually working with. And one of the things I often do in the training on this is I get participants to look at the list of common interventions and to basically ask them, which of these are you not using? Which of these are you not using? And is there an argument for thinking about using them? And it does tend to broaden out the role that you will tend to have. But I will say no more on that. I will pass myself back to Julia. I don't know if there's any other questions at all, or whether that picked all of them up. But I'll pass that over back to you, Julia.
Thank you, Paul. Before I ask any further questions, can I share the results of the poll again? And
yes, and I'll go through that. Very good point.
I'll go through the them yourself, basically what kind of answers you were expecting.
Yeah, okay.
So
okay,
I hope you can see it now.
I can indeed, I can indeed. Okay. So question one, which one of these best describes low self-esteem? Well, you've got two correct answers here, either or both. Either or both. In terms of low self-confidence and self-worth. Murak, well, you now have a better understanding of Murak's three types.
So which one is defensive self-esteem 1 and which one is defensive self-esteem 2?
Right, so defensive self-esteem 1 is where you have the individual who thinks that they're fabulous, but is actually not very competent.
Right.
Defensive self-esteem 2 is where you've got someone who's very competent but doesn't have good self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The different types of low self-esteem. I think that the correct answer to this, as I'm going through it, is none of the above. In fact, is the correct answer on that one. Classic low self-esteem requiring a focus on the client's self-worth. I would argue not exclusively, part of it, but not the only thing, because there will be a competency thing here. Body maintenance and enhancement produces only short-term positive changes. That is not true. That's false. What two skills training-based interventions make the biggest difference to poor self-efficacy? So that's on the competence efficacy side of things, and that is the problem solving and assertiveness training. Distress tolerance is something that relates to emotional state, not so much to attitude towards self. Positive self-talk really depends on what you're talking to yourself about. It could potentially address competency issues, it could potentially address self-worth issues. As everybody recognized, EMDR and diffusion had no relevance to this at all. And well, none of the above was a reasonable guess, folks, but it wasn't the correct answer. And we got, is that all the questions there? Yep, that's all the questions. So I can stop sharing? I think so. Yep.
I already stopped sharing.
Oh, you have, right, okay.
Unless you put it up again.
That's gone.
Yeah, okay.
Now, yep. So there we go. There is a couple of questions here.
Yes.
We've got time. Yeah, I mean, the issue that Sarah makes about in health, there's a tendency to look at the medical side. I think that's a really interesting point, because that mind-body split operates in both directions. My general experience on the whole is that psychotherapists and counselors still frequently get engaged in mind-body split, but they only focus on mind, they ignore body. Medics still, unfortunately, have a tendency to focus on body and ignore mind. I know there's a lot of talk that's done to the opposite in both camps, but I still think there's a tendency to do that. Gemma says, what would be an example of a strategy, something you could use for a man who has low self-esteem to help him demonstrate self-efficacy to himself? Obviously, I'm going to say come along to the training, but it really depends on how low their self-efficacy is. But if we're talking about people who just don't have the confidence to do anything, or don't know how to handle things that come up for them, so a basic adaptations of problem solving, and some very, very, very simple basic goal setting work. The key, by the way, to all of this, which is an issue I've become increasingly interested in over the last couple of years, the central role to changing self-efficacy, the central thing to be doing to change self-efficacy is practicing things. And it's repeatedly doing things. So you have to keep on having a go at stuff. You have to be willing to take a risk. We sometimes use an expression with our clients, typically, can I say, I use it with adult clients, or even though the metaphor is for children, which is, in order to play in the playground, you've got to be willing to scrape your knees. It's just a fact of life. If you want to know how to do something, you are going to have to be bumped along the way. But being bumped along the way is life. And avoidance as a life strategy for protection, which is typically, by the way, how you maintain low self-efficacy. How do you maintain low self-confidence? You basically shut yourself away, you withdraw, you avoid. How do you build confidence? You take a risk, you try, you do, in an incremental way. So anything which is about incremental doing things, any type of skills training, whether it's relevant to the particular client you've got in mind is another issue, but any type of skills training, incrementally building up skills is one particular way you can look at that. Anything which encourages exposure to challenge and doing things to address that challenge, even in small ways, is something else that you might want to have a look at. So I hope that gives you at least some pointers. But I will again say, not surprisingly, that if you'd like to do a deeper dive in it, do sign up for one of the courses on this.
Thank you. Paul, in terms of the courses, guys, I did put the links into the chat box. We have 2 recordings on self-esteem, but I'll do one better, because when you get your follow-up email, I will probably arrange special offers on those. So if you want to learn a bit more on self-esteem, I won't be able to do it tonight, but I'll do it before the follow-up emails comes up.
And I've got that right. That just goes to the people who are here tonight.
No, it will go to everyone, but definitely people who are on the list will receive it. And the other thing I wanted just to look a little suggestion, you know, that graph which Paul showing with worthiness and self-efficacy. Spend some time with it and put the known characters, both in terms of people who you know and famous figures or fictional characters. Try to put them into that table, and it will give you a very good visual aid. And then you meet a new person, a new client, and you will be immediately easily associating them with a particular type of self-esteem.
I would still say I think an assessment is an individual assessment is crucial, but I think
this is just a game for you to understand the types better for yourself. Obviously, don't start putting your new clients into that table straight away.
But I think you're right. I think beginning to think about how do I make sense of this person in front of me? It's a good first step, a good shorthand first step for doing it. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for writing your feedback. Obviously, do feel free to write in the chat what you found particularly useful in this particular evening, because we are still trying to find the best way of making them as useful for you as possible. So if you like something in particular, please write it in the chat. I just wanted to also remind you that the next Thursday will not be in 2 weeks, it will be in 3 weeks, 26th of October. So we'll see you in 3 weeks' time on the 26th of October, and you can unmute yourself and say your goodbyes and have a good rest of the evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you take care, folks, and thanks for all turning up. It's good to see you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Really brilliant.
Thank you.
Bye
Folks.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Right. Take care. Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Take care. Take care.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, I'll be switching off now.
Okay.